Soybean harvest hasn't started yet on our farm, but one of the things we've been looking at hard is how to set the soybean combine. We've had some issues on our farm in the past, grinding up some seed, not picking up every last seed that's down there, having some harvest loss. So we want to talk through today just some steps you can take on your farm to make sure that you've got this thing right.
Well, first of all, with soybeans, the moisture percentage in that seed can change very quickly. You may look at a field in the morning and say, oh, it's 14% moisture. I'm going to wait a little bit and let them dry down because the elevator may start docking me after 13% moisture soybeans. And by the time you get out there at 10 or 11 o'clock later on in that morning, the soybeans are already down to 13. And by the time you really get rolling at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they may be down to 12 or 11 or even 10. Soybean moisture percentage can change so quickly. The first thing that I would say is just be prepared to get going a little bit early. You may start when your field is only 14 or 15% moisture. Just know that if you get a nice sunny and breezy day, that moisture percentage may drop quickly, and by the time you get into that field, it may be much lower than you think.
There are a couple reasons why we want you starting early. Number one is the hidden yield loss that you can have on your farm. I know that as a farmer, you probably, the last thing in the world want to do is take a dock. Okay, so I know that's like against your religion, but here's the thing.
Well, it's like getting one wrong on your test. Right. You don't want to get one wrong on your test.
I know, but here's the problem with this. Once your moisture falls below 13%, you're giving up dollars per acre. And let's take the extreme example. Let's say your soybeans get all the way down to 8%, and you say, well, it's not going to go right from 13 to 8. No, it's not. But every minute that you wait is a minute at the end of harvest. That's what our dad always used to talk to us about. Yep, you want to start early with anything you're doing on the farm because you got to think about, how am I going to finish? Well, a lot of times we've got snow flying when we finish and we want to be done just a little bit earlier, so we got to start a little bit earlier. But here's the flip side of this whole thing. We were just talking about, yep, you don't want this high moisture because you're going to take a little dock. But the low moisture side at 8%, you got to figure 1.5% shrink per point of moisture. That's kind of a common shrink figure. So if I'm 5% lower than I should be at 13%, okay, 5% lower than at the point that I won't take any more dock, times 1.5% shrink, that's 7.5% yield loss. 7.5%. So, I mean, regardless of whatever your yield is, we're talking many dollars per acre multiplied over your whole field. It's a tremendous amount of loss, but hey, you didn't take a dock, right? So it's what I would call hidden yield loss. And then the other side of it is, if you let the beans get a little drier, what's going to happen out in your field? There are a lot more that are going to pop off right at the combine or even before you get through with the combine. It's a big deal. So you always want to start your harvest at a high moisture level and work your way down.
Okay, you hit on something there, Brian, shatter loss. And this is something that I think really gets underestimated out in the field too. We get in such a hurry just to get rolling through the field and trying to get a lot of acres done. And many times we may see a weather pattern coming down the road and say, man, I gotta get more acres done before that hits. But we're not stopping and taking a look at what's laying on the ground there. It's a lot of dollars. And this year, when you think about, hey, commodity prices are coming down, you really can't afford to leave dollars out in your field. So when
but even so, I mean, yeah, commodity prices are coming down, but we still have $10 soybeans or close to it. I mean, that's a lot of dollars per acre. It's not $4 soybeans, it's $10 an acre soybeans. And what we really want you to do, we developed a harvest loss app a couple of years ago. So for your smartphone or your iPad, you can download this for free. Just search for Ag PhD harvest loss. When you pull up this harvest loss app, we developed this in conjunction with Case IH because they know how important it is. We know how important it is as farmers. You can punch in, hey, I've got a square here. I've got 3 soybeans. How many dollars per acre is that going to amount to based on, you can punch in your own price. So maybe you have your soybeans contracted at a higher price level, or maybe you haven't sold any yet and you're expecting a lower price level. You can just punch that in and then you know what it's really costing you. And that's the big thing, because when you walk through the field, you see a few soybeans, it's not the end of the world, but it doesn't take very many soybeans, and all of a sudden you've lost $10, $20, $30 per acre.
It only takes 4 soybeans per square foot to equal 1 bushel of yield loss per acre. What we've done on our farm, we just took some PVC tubes and made a 1-foot square. I've seen other farmers do it with wood, where they make a 1-foot square. Just something really easy. You can just drop on the ground and then kind of sweep aside the residue and see how many soybeans are laying there. And if you're seeing 4 soybeans in that square, okay, I lost a bushel per acre. If I've got 1,000 acres of beans and beans are worth $10, that's $10,000 that I've lost. That's huge. That's huge. So make sure you're doing that. Stop a few times as you're going through. Get out of the combine. check for loss, and make adjustments as needed.
But that's the big thing. It's stopping while you're combining. And I was already talking about, hey, the snow's flying by the time we get done harvesting, so we want to move this thing along, right? Well, it's really hard to stop and make those adjustments sometimes when you know you've got all these acres yet to do, but you got to do it. It's worth a lot of money to you. And that's really the biggest thing that we wanted to stress to you today. When it comes to setting the combine, every combine is going to be a little bit different, but the big thing is we want to make sure that your head's right down there on the ground as much as you can to pick up every last pod if possible, to cut those off appropriately, and to make sure that you're not getting loss out in the field. And the big thing you want to do is once you start combining a little bit, you want to get out of your combine and then go in front of the combine and check to see what's already on the ground there. Maybe back your combine up just a little bit so you can see what you're having for loss at the head, and then look behind your combine. So there are 3 different losses that you can look at, and depending on where that loss is coming from, then you know a little bit more what you can do. Obviously, if the beans are already laying on the ground before you get there, you're too late out in the field. You should have been out there harvesting earlier, and sometimes, of course, Mother Nature's against us and we can't do it. But you just got to understand, hey, there's no combine setting in the world I can get when those beans are already laying on the ground. The last thing I was going to mention quick is not running so much through the returns, especially if you're a seed grower. We just want to make sure that we have good quality soybeans that are coming out the other end. And even if you aren't a seed grower, we want to, as a country, have nice soybean seed that's going to help us in the overall export market.
One other thing that can make your soybeans look great is keeping the weeds out of them. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed coming up next.